That's not so good, is it? Let's dive in and find out why and see if these cheap guitars are actually as good as you might think. Okay, so before we get too much further, I just want to tell you this is not the same guitar that you saw in the intro. This is the second one I've got. This is probably the most disjointed video I've ever had to put together, and as you go through you'll see why I've sent the other one back. Well, you probably heard it in the beginning. I couldn't fix that fault. I can't even remember now. It's taken so long to get this organised that if I even recorded anything further about that, but I did take some photos, so I'll show you what the problem is. And also you can see, like this one, even since filming the sort of play along bit, I've changed the strings on that, which has made a massive difference. There is some close-up stuff of the guitar coming, which is not this one, it's the first one, but I've got to say they're both pretty lovely in that respect, but I won't sort of, you know, divulge too much yet. As you watch, you'll see the kind of differences, you know, in the finish and the playability, certainly. So have a look through and make of it what you will. And what I'll do, I'll come back to this guitar a bit later and talk about the things that I've done at this final point of filming. So yeah, apologies that it's all over the place, but you'll find out why. Okay, see you in a minute. Hey, Mark here, how you doing? Welcome to this video where I'm going to look at this Harley Benton Gold Top, and I'm going to explore a few things in it which I'm not so happy about. I am a fan of the cheaper guitars these days, and as we dive in I'll explain a little bit more about the sort of pros and cons of the budget end of the guitars compared to something like a Mexican Strat, which I bought earlier this year in 2025, depends when you're watching this. And there's a few issues with this, as you saw in the introduction, and we're going to look at that and see if we can rectify that, explain what it is, I'll show you what it is, and also tell you the sort of backstory behind me actually getting this guitar, when normally I would go for something a little bit more expensive, but you know, I am keen to look at the budget end and see what the sort of fuss is all about with the Harley Benton stuff. The jet videos that I posted a few months back have really sort of taken off lately, and I've got quite a few comments on those from people who've bought budget guitars and have had different experiences with them. Either they haven't been very playable, they've had an issue with something particular, or what they've done is they've liked the guitar in principle but done some upgrades. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this guitar and see what upgrades you might want to do if you would want to go down this route in the first place, or maybe spend a little bit more money. So what I'll do is I'll explain sort of why I got into the gold top stuff, and it's something that I've been hankering for quite some time. So let's have a look. Straight out of the box, this came over from Germany. It took about a week to get here, and I guess, you know, through the transit in a cardboard box, it's never going to do any guitar any favours. So I picked it up and played it a bit, and I found this dead spot up the top here. And what it is, it's a raised fret, which I'll show you here. Now, I had a good look over it. If you look at the picture here, you can see that the end is sticking up slightly around this kind of 17th fret area. And it's choking off, I think it's actually the 18th fret that is proud there, and whether that was a quality control defect or something that happened in transit, I don't know. Because the other thing that happened when I got it out of the box, they come with a cable and the Allen key to adjust the neck tension, and that was actually underneath the back of it. Now luckily it didn't really mark it, it put like a tiny little mark on there, which, you know, I can live with. I don't kind of cherish my guitars and worry about them and all. They have to be beautiful all the time. I play them, I gig with them, and they get used for teaching. They go in and out of the car, they do get knocked about. I try to be careful with them, I don't mishandle them, but things happen and it's just the way they are. It creates a bit of the provenance, and if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't be spending 6,000 or 7,000 quid for these Murphy Les Paul reissue custom thingies, which, you know, personally I think is a bit bonkers, but each to his own. So anyway, this guitar in principle, you've probably seen all the reviews about it with the P90s, and to be honest with you, I can't really fault it for its price, with the exception of that. And as I say, I don't know if that's a quality control issue or something that just happened in transit because of temperature differences. I'm going to try and rectify it, and hopefully towards the end of this video I might have done so. But what I did do is I raised the action up and it did get rid of it, but obviously the fret is an issue which needs addressing literally anyway. I did drop the action back down, left the guitar for another week to settle and to see how the neck went, and it's actually very, very flat, and the actual action on it is actually pretty good when you can get it down low, but there are a few spots where the neck might need a little bit of relief, as you can hear there. But I have got the actual man down purposefully low at the moment, just so I can show you what's going on with this fret, and there are others, so I'm going to have a look at that. In terms of sound, what we do is we'll come back to it when I've set the guitar up a bit better for the video, and I'll show you around it, and we'll have a look and see if we think it's worth the money. But I wanted to point out, and this isn't against Harley Benton or anyone like that, you know, things happen. I've got Fender Stratocaster that I got earlier this year, which I'm going to talk about in another video, and honestly the quality control on that is horrendous, and it's actually put me off buying another Fender. And personally I've got like 5 Strats, I've had like 4 or 5 Tellys, and, you know, Strats for like 30 odd years. I don't personally feel like I should have to spend 2,000 quid just to get a guitar that's got Made in America on it and doesn't have any defects. And I'm sure, as some of you might comment watching this, they probably have defects on them anyway. But the Strat I'm talking about, I'm going to put that together in another video. But for now, let's have a look and listen and see what we think of this. And obviously, as always, I invite all your comments, and I'd love to hear your feedback with your experiences and what you think, you know, of the budget end of guitars as well. Okay, let's crack on. Okay, so I'm not quite sure where this is going to fit in the video at the moment because of the way I'm filming it, because obviously now this is the second guitar. What I've had to do is really play around with the truss rod, which is why the cover's off, and I've sort of given it some neck relief, and that didn't really work, and I ended up getting some flat spots here. So what I did, I just went the opposite way and cranked the neck right forward so that the angle there is pretty flat now, and then I adjusted the action back up. But to be honest with you, there's still a lot of tension there, and I think a lot of that is to do with the angle of the strings against there, and also the strings themselves. I'll probably change them, and whether I'll do them before the end of the video, I'm not sure. But what I plan to do is to do a wrap, so I changed the string angle across the top there, like I've done on my other Les Pauls, and then hopefully with newer strings, like with some Ernie balls or D Markleys or whatever I end up using on there, the increased string angle will take some of the tension off. And I don't know what strings Harley Benton put on when they're new, but you know, the Jet guitars have pretty crappy strings on, and I changed them and it made the guitar a lot better. So I'm hoping it'll make this guitar a lot better too, by just literally doing those two things, wrapping around and then putting nicer strings on. So we'll see, but I like the sound of it. You know, just have to see how the saga continues. Right, it's that one. Okay, so if you're here, well done, you made it through this far of the video at least anyway. And just after this bit, I'm going to put some close-up stuff of the original guitar, because as you may have gathered now, this is the second one, and you can probably tell because it's got all these fresh string bits dangling off. So what I did was I changed the strings. They made a massive, massive difference just to the playability of it, because I found the tension on the strings from the factory, don't know what strings they were, they had a lot of tension on them anyway. But what I was going to do, because I couldn't get this to adjust up or down originally when I had a screwdriver on, and even when I slackened the strings off, it didn't really want to know. When I took the other strings off completely and took the tailpiece off, these bits here, I wound them up. So if you can see on the camera there, they're a lot higher than they were when I got the guitar. Basically that was wound down to the body, and subsequently, make sure I don't drop it now after all this work, the string angle there was a lot more intense. And what that's done, lifting that up a little bit and putting some better strings on there, these are Ernie Ball, I think I put 9-42s on, they're so much easier to bend. Much nicer guitar to play. I'm still sorting the neck out. The upshot is that I might have put a bit too much relief on it and push it up sort of so the middle's a bit too near the strings now. I think with these things, you know, it just takes a bit of time. Like I said at the beginning, for the other guitar that turned up, you don't know what goes on in transit. They go through a lot of temperature changes. You don't know how good the quality of the wood is or anything else at this price point. And that leads me into saying, really, I think for the money, it's a good buy. And I think if you know what you're doing with guitars, then it's a great kind of complement to what other guitars you might already have. If it was your first guitar, I think, I don't know if I've just been unlucky with these two, because I've seen a lot of other YouTube videos where they seem to play great, and whether they're not telling the whole story or whether they were just great guitars, who knows. But if I was buying this guitar and this turned up for me as a beginner and I didn't know how to play and didn't really know my way around a guitar very well, it might not make that much difference because I'm not pushing the guitar. I might be working on just chords or learning some rock stuff, and maybe I don't know how to do big string bends and that kind of thing. So it might not affect my technique or my playing ability. But if I wanted to kind of expand on that, the guitar would then, as it came from the factory, be a limitation, and that might be an issue. So I think you have to draw your own conclusion from that. If you're going to spend, say, let's say sub £200 or dollars, whatever your price point is in your market, I think you've got to be aware of that there are going to be limitations, and you might have to spend a bit of money getting the guitar up to the standard you want. Now, whether that still makes it worthwhile doing, and if you just spent an extra 100, 200 or whatever, then you'd get a superior instrument. Again, I think there is a little bit of an element of luck of the draw in that, but there are, you know, also you have to factor in the, you know, the thing is, do you have extra $200? If you're spending $150, do you have $400 to spend on a guitar? Maybe not. I was tempted to send this back. I thought I'd persevere with it. I might change the tuners in future. They seem a bit of a weak point. I'm definitely going to change the pickups. I was sitting in front of my little Black Star amp having a play about the other day, and they started squealing, and I realised they're pretty microphonic. So I definitely wouldn't want to take this guitar and gig it as it is. I'll be looking at probably some Planet Tone P90s from Jose there at the Planet Tone guys in the States. So draw from this what you will, and the whole thing about cheap guitars, they're cheap for a reason. I think we've got to bear that in mind. I think for the money, the fit and finish and all the stuff is fantastic. I mean, come on, £129. But that is a bit like saying I bought a cheap car and it had 3 wheels and the steering wheel didn't really go full lock to lock. You know, you kind of expect it to do what it should. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to persevere with it. I'm going to sort these out when I get a chance and just get the neck fettled in. And I'll give you some updates on it. And generally, I'm enjoying playing it, actually. I like the sound of those P90s. Yeah, it's quite a sweet tone. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video, got something out of it in terms of, you know, if it's helped you at all, or even just what to look for, because it's a big thing when you buy a cheap guitar, isn't it? If you're not an experienced player, how do you know what you're getting? How do you know what to look for to see if it's good? So rather than ramble on, you know, just check out the other bit of the video if you want to see what the actual fit and finish and quality is like. If you've got any comments, as always, I love hearing them, and I always try and get back to everybody who leaves me a comment on my channel. So it just leaves me to say thanks for watching. See you next time, and just check out the rest of the video. Okay, so as you can see here, I don't really have the best angles with the lighting in this particular moment until I've got all those figured out, because it's a bit of a mess behind me off camera where I still haven't finished building it. But you can see, still got the original wrapping on the pickups there, and there's also on the, it doesn't really show up in the light, might just be able to see it, the cellophane is still on the pick guard. So if I zoom back a bit, you can have a look at it. Now generally, I cannot fault the build colour. It's not really a gold top, I'd say more like orange sparkle personally. But if you look at the binding and all those kind of details on there, it's actually pretty good, you know. And you can see the binding all the way around there, and the finish on the hardware and all that kind of stuff. You know, I'm pretty happy with that, to be fair. The neck's quite nice. It's quite a nice colour. I'll probably oil it up and change the strings anyway, because the strings on these budget guitars are another budget feature. And if I come in over the top there, you can see the headstock. You know, it's very Gibson-esque, obviously. And what I'll do, I'll spin the guitar over. Well, actually, let's have a quick look at the inlays first. You know, they're all nicely done. You know, for the money, this was 129 of your English pounds. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous, isn't it? I bought a few bottles of wine that cost that much. Not one bottle, several. That actually added up to that much. I don't want you thinking I'm a lush or anything. I'm going to flip it over and you can see the back. And that reflection there, that's all my foam, which is going on the ceiling. I've bought millions of them off of Temu, don't judge me. Right, so generally, the fit and finish, everything else, the binding, the tuners feel a little bit cheap, but you know, hey, you've got to compromise somewhere, haven't you? And you can always adjust them in the end there a little bit as well. If they're a bit tight, I think might just do that. So generally I can't fault it. It is very nicely put together, apart from that fret, sadly, which I'll show you in the photo because I don't think you can get in really close enough with this to make it that visible. Now you can just see it possibly there. Anyway, let's see how we get on. But yeah, generally quite impressed with the build quality and the fit and finish. If it wasn't for that fret, I wouldn't be able to fault it, I don't think.